Welcome to Vibe Sense. You know, chances are at some point in your life, you're gonna take out a loan. Maybe for a house, for college, or a new car. It's a huge financial step, right? You sign all the paperwork, you make your payments, and you just hope everything goes according to plan. But what happens when it doesn't? And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. When things go wrong and you can't pay the bank back, does the system treat everybody the same way? Is the rulebook for a regular person the same one they use for a corporate giant? Well, let's dive in and find out. So, first up, let's look at the financial world most of us are familiar with. We're calling it the middle-class gauntlet. This is the story of your average borrower and the pretty tough system they have to navigate. Okay, so here's the thing you gotta remember. For most people, a loan is a massive, long-term commitment. You borrow for a home, maybe for your kid's education, and over 15, 20 years, with all the interest, you could easily end up paying back double what you originally took out. The stakes are just incredibly high from the get-go. But, you know, life isn't always that simple, right? A job gets lost, a medical emergency pops up out of nowhere, and boom, a payment is missed. In this middle-class gauntlet, what happens next? Well, the consequences are swift, and they are severe. We're talking about non-stop calls from recovery agents, legal notices showing up from the bank, and in the worst-case scenario, they can actually seize the very assets you took the loan for, your home, your car. And on top of all that, your credit score is completely destroyed, making it almost impossible to get financial help ever again. It is a truly devastating spiral. All right, so that's one reality. Now let's flip the coin over and talk about our second character, the corporate giant. And as we're about to see, when they can't pay their debts, well, it really seems like they're playing a whole different ballgame. And to really get a handle on this, let's look at a pretty famous case from the last few years, Anil Ambani's companies, and specifically Reliance Communications, or RCOM. This case perfectly illustrates the other side of our story. And this is where the scale just becomes mind-boggling. We're not talking about a car loan here. RCOM owed 45,000 crore rupees. That's over $6 billion to 53 different banks. I mean, it's a number that's almost hard to wrap your head around. Just one of those lenders, the State Bank of India, was on the hook for nearly 3,000 crore rupees. That single loan has actually since become part of a fraud investigation with some serious allegations about misuse and diversion of funds. So, yeah, this is an incredibly serious situation. So logically, you'd think, right, if missing a payment of, say, 50,000 rupees can cost someone their home, then defaulting on 45,000 times crore rupees, well, the consequences must be on an absolutely apocalyptic scale. That's what would make sense. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. So what was actually recovered from that massive 45,000 crore debt? Less than 1%. That's right, 0.92% to be exact. The rest? Basically written off. The obligation, it just kind of vanished. How on earth is that possible? Well, the answer lies in a law called the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, or the IBC. It's basically a legal process designed to sort out corporate debt, and it often prioritizes keeping a company running over making sure the lenders get all their money back. In RCOM's case, the resolution plan that came out of this process, well, it resulted in the banks recovering almost nothing. Okay, now that we've heard both stories, let's put them right next to each other, because this is where the difference becomes just crystal clear. Just look at this table. On one side, you've got loans in the lakhs. On the other, we're talking tens of thousands of crores. The consequences for not paying? Asset seizure versus loan write-offs. And then there's the most telling row of all, the recovery rate. For a middle-class home loan, you better believe the bank is getting 100% of its asset back. For RCOM, 0.92%. Honestly, if you take just one image away from this whole thing, let it be this one. This bar chart says it all. On the left, a full bar, 100% recovery from an ordinary citizen. On the right, a bar so tiny you can barely even see it. That's the 0.92% recovered from the corporate giant. The visual contrast is just, it's undeniable. So when you see all of this laid out, it forces you to ask some really fundamental questions. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. This is about the ultimate question of fairness in our financial system. And here's the first big one. Why does the system have such sharp teeth when it comes to the small borrower, but it seems to have no bite at all for the big players. Why is one person held to this incredibly rigid standard, while another gets to just walk away from these enormous obligations? Which, of course, leads to the next question: what about accountability? I mean, if the current process results in pretty much zero recovery, what real measures are in place to hold corporate defaulters responsible for the public money they borrowed from these banks? And finally, all of this really boils down to the most important question of all. Looking at this tale of two borrowers, how do we start to build a financial system that is actually equitable? One where the rules and the consequences are applied fairly to everyone, no matter how big or influential they are. At the end of the day, the story isn't just about loans and interest rates. It's really a reflection of a much deeper imbalance in our system. And it kind of asks all of us to decide what we truly value: financial justice or financial power. That's the thought we want to leave you with. Thanks for watching Vibe Sense.